All right, yeah. Well, congratulations. It sounds like it was a great template for us to follow at other locations. And one of the things that I do for these types of events, just as an FYI, I overbook them by like 60% or more sometimes. So like, if it's free, so the amount of people that show up is greatly reduced for some reason. I guess people just like to put their name on things and not show. What kind of no-show did you see?
I think apart from our core group, there were in the room 35 new people, right?
Oh, good.
So although 60 signed up, I mean, someone from the team, if you are here, correct me with the numbers, but when I manually counted, like at one point I saw 35 to 40 people, broadly speaking, which is, I think, a fair turnout. And the room was quite big, which is actually good. And I think Tim Walton and others really made a lot of arrangements, actually, a lot of food, a lot of drinks. So you would always see a bottle, I mean, a beer in my hand wherever I was watching at my pictures. I was saying I always had a beer in my hand. So
Oh, okay, great. Awesome.
That's a
Well, if I was
big thank
there,
you
yeah.
to Requesty and Google too
yeah,
for hosting, eh?
And Google didn't lock down the premise too much. I know they're famous for that sort of thing.
they're fine. They're fine. They were quite good actually. And everyone, I think, yeah, they played their part.
Oh, great. Well, sounds like a good time. Um, Today I was gonna do something a little different. I Next week I'm doing a what they call a Gen I super stream with O'Reilly, the book publisher. So I thought maybe you guys could watch as I prepare my presentation and the online portion of it, which is basically a data. It's focused on data analysis, data analytics. So what I need to come up with today is the live demo portion of that presentation. So I'm gonna try to figure that out on this call. I know generally what I'm gonna present, and I've only got 35 minutes, so I need a combination of both a presentation that introduces the concepts of generative AI and vibe coding and agentics, and then I'm gonna jump in and probably do like a an intro to actually doing that for data analytics. So I gotta figure all that out. They give me a topic, right? So and it has to be data analytics related. So that's what I'm gonna try to figure out today. So
Fantastic.
if you're not into data analytics or vibing with data analytics, then this might not be your session. You guys are literally watching me do my work today. Like I needed to do this. I figured I just share it. And that's actually why I'm not live broadcasting this, because in fairness to O'Reilly, I figured I'd maybe not share that more publicly until the actual live event. And that live event is on the 29th, which I think is like next Thursday. But if it's 22 plus 7, I think it's next Thursday. So here we go. So you guys get a little sneak peek. Again, like always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to jump in and let me know what you're thinking. Happy to share my opinion here. All right, so I'm building my little presentation. I like the retro futuristic look. It's kind of the thing I go for. I like bluish greens and turquoise. So this is the Roof brand. Here's the subject matter. I still need to format this a little bit. You're looking at a fairly rough version. I'm going to send this out a little later. This font's a little too big. Make that a little smaller. There we go. Yeah, this is their text, not mine. I wouldn't call myself a leading AI consultant, but whatever. Um, you guys know me, whatever. This is my approach to generative AI and agentics, proactive, autonomous, collaborative, and targeted. I love acronyms. It's just my thing. What can I say? If there's an acronym that needs to be created, I will create it. So PACT. I saw in some sci-fi movie recently, the PACT with the bad guys, but that's okay. So vibe coding, I it was actually quite difficult to come up with a definition for vibe coding. So I decided to sort of dream up my own definition. Crafting code by feel, balancing functionality with readability, style, and project mood. That's 100% me dreaming that up. Basically, I kind of thought something similar like surfing, And I wanted to create a separation between the idea of vibe coding and agentic engineering as kind of a spectrum. So describing it, I'm like rapid iteration versus, sort of versus ideation. So the ability to be guided by intuition, the ability to sort of, follow where the path leads without actually knowing where that endpoint is. And for faster prototyping and code that feels approachable, basically surfing the vibe, if you will, for code. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I figured I needed to sort of have a correlation here for agentic engineering itself and the sort of idea of having a plan or a process. So where vibe coding is flow, you're in the zone, you're using your intuition, you don't really have a process, you're kind of trying to figure out where the path leads. Agentic is kind of the opposite. It's structured, it's process driven. It involves large amounts of planning and testing and the iteration and refinement. So one side is ideation, the idea. The other side is iteration, the refinement of the idea. Now, let me pause. Does that make sense, or am I just making shit up here as I go?
No, that's perfect.
You may want to distinguish the presence or absence of feedback in vibe coding versus agentic engineering.
Sorry, say it again. I had a bit trouble
You
hearing
may
you.
want to emphasize the presence or absence of a feedback between vibe coding and agentic engineering.
Okay,
Vibe coding, the
that.
human is the feedback
No.
loop. For agentic engineering tries to reflect or do its own feedback before returning to the human.
Feedback loops, and I like that. And you're saying that on agentic, the human.
Other way around. Human is the feedback loop when vibe coding.
Yeah, I
Agentic
think that's
engineering,
what it is.
Self vibe code. Is that self?
Yeah,
What's it called? Reflex or self feedbacks.
exactly.
The machine is the feedback loop. Like
The
that?
reflection is within the machine, and the reflection is
We'll
with
need
the
to
human.
massage the language, but yes, that's the distinction that I think should be emphasized.
I like that.
I mean, though there is a commonality, right? I mean, one of the rabbit holes, then how to avoid. I think vibe coding can be very powerful, but vibe coding can lead to rabbit holes. But the whole point about, yeah, probably that's a bit of structure, but the point about the test-driven approach, the research, right? The initial research. I think whether we are vibe coding or we are doing agentic engineering, because I've played around with cursor, windsurf everywhere in different ways. Research is key, even if you do a simple deep research using Gemini, right? And asking the system to adopt a test-driven approach. So feature by feature. I think that is the one way you can really follow the vibe, because otherwise, if it is random, then we can't guard the system. We can't get the system go down some guardrails. So I think having that research first, so before we code anything, like just think through it and do even like use AI just to research. I think that is very powerful.
For me, it
That's
felt
more
that
Spark
you're
specific.
methodology driven. Like you've established a methodology and now you're following that method.
Yeah.
The research to generate the methodology, and the methodology then creates that framework of containment.
I think Ruve yourself, you said, I think it was last week, where before you initiate Spark, you want to give it a framework for it to follow, right? Whereas on the other side, you have nothing. So you're specifying you're specifying the guardrails and the framework. So guardrails and framework on the agentic side, whereas vibe coding is like, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Okay. I think I don't want to make a mountain of text either. Like I got 35 minutes, so I figured I bullet points but I like what you guys are saying. One is free form, the other structured. And that's kind of the story I'm trying to say here. And it's kind of the spectrum.
It very much reminds me actually of Rutman's integrated thinking methodology, because that is a lot about going back and refining the methodology itself as a process of sort of deep integration across the entire value chain.
So what's that called?
It's called integrative thinking. It was actually part of Roger Martin's big bring to Rotman back in like 2010s. That's integrative thinking. So you could call it an integrated methodology. It's essentially you visit the whole value chain and refine the methods at each step. So what I feel about Spark is that, you know, it is a framework of methods, and the iterative process will deepen each method, and then you string them together to go to create a value chain.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
What's the
To me, the
expertise of the
difference
audience?
is the difference between fun and work. That encapsulates it. Vibe coding is fun. It's kind of the hobbyist. Agentic engineering is work. You're trying to really get in there and create something that has a method and will endure, hopefully.
Okay, yeah. So one is learning, the other is doing. And all right, I don't want to make this too. I don't want to put too much in here because I actually speak to it a little bit. But let's see if I can. Let's make that a little some more subtle. Nope, too subtle.
I think on the agentic side of things, it's really embodying, if you could be the best software engineer all the time, every time, these are the aspects of that. Because those who aspire to be that great engineer, they concede, I don't have enough time for docs. I don't have enough time for good architecture or something. But the rigor that the agentic engineering offers is its consistency. There's a price on the tokens, but if you can be consistent, and Agentix is just that great consistent engineer. And if you're weak on your product requirements document, it's hard to be consistent.
Yeah, those are all really good points. And I got spell methodology, right? All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to go from the spectrum, if you will, to the actual methodology that Martin was mentioning. And for me, this is obviously one of many methodologies, but this is the easiest methodology to get up and running. So then I'll explain what the Spark is a kind of comprehensive mechanism to both define a structure to both the free-form vibe, where you need some structure, but you can use it to sort of guide. And then the idea, and I've got another one too. I guess I could probably include here, but I get the AIGI spec, which is better for vibe coding. But I'm going to stick with this Spark because I think it's easier for the types of projects that I guess the O'Reilly guys would probably want. Then I'm going to explain best I can what the heck the model context protocol is. And every day someone's calling me out saying that the MCP is bullshit, but you know, whatever. I think I've come around to it. I think I went through that phase myself for a while. But basically, I think there was someone that mentioned this a while back, and maybe on one of these calls, the idea of the USB-C for AI, kind of a universal interface for plugging things in, tools and whatnot. So this is going to be the sort of core of the presentation. I'll explain what the MCP is, plug and play, zero friction. Now this is me and my interpretation, and I guess it's arguable at best, but the Unix style composable components. Built-in guardrails. It allows you to understand the structure of how an LLM should interact with secondary systems. One of the biggest issues I have, and I see someone else every day, people showing up and creating like an MCP abstraction for an LLM. That completely defeats the purpose. If your MCP is just another abstraction to another AI, it's pointless, to be honest. Like that's the whole point of the system, is for the AI, the LLM itself, to interact with things that aren't necessarily LLMs. So if it's just an AI talking to another AI, I don't think there's a whole lot of value there. But maybe that's
Wouldn't
just
the value be going across model paradigm, I guess, families? So Grok to GPT.
Do you need MCP for that? Like,
Is there a better way in lieu of MCP?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. So when you look at like, let's go in here, and actually right now I'm going to jump in, and in my presentation I'll jump in and do a live demo, which for the folks hopefully on O'Reilly, they've never seen this before. So we're opening up a whole new crew to people sort of to introduce what we're doing here. So then I'm going to pop this in.
Just before we go there, on that slide about MCP, I think I kind of best see MCP. It's one of the best guardrails around I mean, people will argue otherwise, but security and control, because you are able to expose access to data source in a very controlled manner. So the tools, for example, if you're building an AI app, you want to make sure you're doing it securely, safely, trustworthily, right? So what an organization wants to expose, they then have it in their control through the tools that they define. So yeah, it's a universal USB-C, but it's that much more than that, which goes to this point about responsible, trustworthy AI.
Yeah, but
That's how
you can't use MCP by default as a guardrail. It's actually the opposite. It's completely open.
But if I
You
want to
c-
expose my data, like if I'm a corporate organization, I want to expose my data and I will only do it through the MCP tools, then I have control on what I'm exposing to like open banking or others, right? The way they did is like APIs, you open up the access to the data, but you're opening it up to AI applications and agents. But then you are applying controls about you can only do so through these tools. And these tools do only these things, which I know what it does. So I have control.
based on what you coded in the server and what the server is advertising up to the client. If you don't have all those controls in the server, it's completely open. People can just add prompts and ask the MCP to do stuff, and if they can abuse and coerce, then you
could the same can be argued for any API, website, whatever, right? If you don't put a password on your website, they can just access your website. If you don't put a token on your API, they can just access your API. I think that that is in some ways just an inherent part of any information technology system. It's not like MCP is inherently more or less secure. It's up to you to secure it.
Yes,
right?
it is, but I wouldn't use the word guardrail by default in a conversation with MCP.
Well, I'm using it in the sense that you should think about the guardrail by default.
Yeah, you should do.
All right, so back to the comment about the use of what was it? Multiple models. Like for me to use multiple models, so you can see here I'm using GPT 4.1 for my MCP integration because it has a really large context window. But when we go here to different modes that I've got set up here, for example, tester, I'm using a different model again. So I'm using Sonnet 3.7, hopefully Sonnet 4 if it comes out in 10 minutes. And anyway, and by the way, if anyone's watching that separate, let me know what they come out with. That's announced in like 10 minutes. So I'm actually switching between models here, depending. And then there's this new when to use option. So now what I can figure out exactly is what I want to do with this. Oh, let's go back to the README. So I've got this presentation, and this is a super stream or whatever. And I've got basically 15 minutes to show them something. I think the most valuable thing I could show someone would be some kind of, and I'm thinking out loud here, maybe you guys give me some ideas, some sort of rudimentary data science application that combines maybe the Perplexity MCP, which is really great data collection, save it to maybe some kind of like SQLite database.
What's he doing? What are you doing? Hey.
Oh.
What are you doing?
What's going on here? You guys are throwing me off.
Sorry, somebody's
I'm muting everyone.
Somebody's vibe coding.
Yeah, they made a major breakthrough there. All right, sorry, that totally threw off my chain of thought. I'm thinking out loud here, by the way. And just unmute yourself if you actually want to say something. I just muted everybody. So back to my chain of thought. I want to create some sort of data science system that does an analysis. So I'm going to use the system to do that right now. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to switch to my MCP, and I'm going to say, give me some ideas on a basic kit algo using a SQLite DB for the collection and understanding of like what data should we collect? Any ideas? We can do anything.
What kind of audience are you anticipating with the O'Reilly guys? Are
That's a
these
good question.
enthusiasts, professionals, something else?
Yeah, I'm guessing professionals. I don't really know. For advanced data analytics, from introductions to more automated, and they, by the way, the O'Reilly guys came up with this title.
Do an analysis of the tariffs.
I already did that. The tariffs are so political.
I know. I'm just kidding.
Just use the
yeah.
Backblaze golf data.
So you
Yeah,
could do,
have to be.
you could do
so
housing
computer.
data. You could do housing data. That's one that we used the data set of. One of our golden data sets was housing data. You could do
Okay.
consultancy rates, you know, jobs.
The latest jobs data from the UK, maybe. Let's steer clear of the US. Too political in the US. Every time I post anything about the US, everyone gets flips out at me. Apparently, my
jobs, how the layoffs are affecting all the AI transformation
job data
change.
relating. It might give us the wrong thing we're looking for, but relating to AI affecting technical jobs from the UK. I'm gonna do the UK. It's no one ever got mad about the UK, right? Everyone loves the UK.
Well, no one takes
So-
offense in the UK, you can just say. So
No, they
it's
should.
fine.
Yeah, it's somehow that post about my post this morning gave like 15 people they said I'm a woke libertard. I don't even know what the hell that even means. I just pointing out that it's dangerous to not have regulations, but apparently that makes me woke. But regardless, here we are. So okay, I'm gonna use that. So I'm gonna use the MCP. So if you guys are curious how I do this, I've got my MCP instructions and use the MCP and the perplexity. Yeah, MCP.
So that's just a markdown file with some instructions that you wrote.
Yeah, I copy and pasted them directly from it. So I did these instructions. So it just basically says how to use the MCP, and otherwise it kind of messes around trying to figure out how to use the MCP. So what I do is I went into here and I chose the perplexity and literally just copy and pasted this.
Oh, got it.
And then I copy and paste that over here. And then when I refer to it, it doesn't have to spend 10 minutes and $2 trying to figure out how to use it. Save to a
You know, it would be really smart if it actually read its own instructions that you just copied.
It's supposed to, but it never does. I don't know why.
Mhm.
There's a /tool and /discovery option. But there's no consistency in the specification, so everyone implements it differently. So it'd save the data to SQLite DB in /db data DB.
Do you have a SQLite instance running?
No, I'm gonna create it. So we're going to do that right now. Use subtasks via new underscore task for the SQLite DB creation. All right. So now we're gonna practice what we preach. I'm researching. I'm researching the data. I'm gonna use SkyKit, scikit. So now it's gonna create a structure. I'm vibing this, as you guys can tell. I'm just kind of winging it. I'll refine it here in a minute. This is a live vibe session anyway, so why not live vibe it? So what this is doing is creating a SQLite. SQLite's by far the easiest way to store dynamic information. It's light, it's easy, it's text, it's for these sorts of things, you don't need a vector or anything crazy. All right,
You should try DuckDB sometime.
Yeah, I like DuckDB for the same reasons. We could do DuckDB. Here, why don't we do that then? Okay, stop. All right, you convinced me.
It's an analytics effort, so should be good enough.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little heavier though, right?
Heavier on the RAM, but easier on the I/O.
Okay. All right, you convinced me. we're gonna go back. We're going to delete that momentarily. All right. And we're gonna start again because I like the idea of DuckDB. And all right, we're gonna use MCP, it's a great start by researching DuckDB and DuckDB.
Yeah, DuckDB is tuned for OLAP workloads, so it's
perfect.
it's technically a good fit for what you're doing here.
Yeah, you're right. It's a great, and to be honest, that was one of the things I was considering the other day as well. So that was a good call out. All right, so start by researching DuckDB using Complexity AI. Let's see. All right. I always feel like I'm starting the boat motor on this thing. Give it a couple pulls. And by the way, if anyone asks, I did get an electric starter for my boat, so I'm moving up in the world. It's
Nice.
It's I think they call it a rib. It's like one of those boats you like storm the beach on. I also have this little cove on Lake Huron. So if I ever need to go across the lake, I've got a nice little way to do it. I'm about 80 kilometers from Michigan, straight across the lake.
Do you need to carry your passport when you do that trip?
Oh, if I don't even go to the States right now. I think if I showed up at the border, I'd probably be smuggled off to El Salvador at this point. Let's just say calling my Friday the AI hackerspace might have not been the best branding. Anyway, I get the special room. It's all good.
Special room.
Yeah, they take my laptop and then they get my password and then they ask me questions about AI. Last time they asked me about what does AI stand for as an acronym. I'm like, I think it's Adobe Illustrator. They didn't appreciate that joke as much as I did. All right, so what's it doing? It's creating a initialization of DuckDB. I assume DuckDB needs to be installed through a pip, I'm gonna guess.
It's a runtime, so you just add it to your path.
Okay. Let's see if it figures that all out.
Ruth, how close do you need to get when you are prompting? Because I think they're calling it AI turnover. So how close do you need to get in vernacular terms to find what you want when you're prompting like this?
Well, you're seeing what I'm doing. So right now it didn't find the module, which is obvious. It needs to install it. But I'm just vibing it, right? I'm not giving it particularly a lot of guidance. I'm using the orchestrator, but I actually manually invoke the orchestrator by basically telling it to do the subtask in the new _task. So you'll see that the autocoder currently is a subtask, right? So I'm kind of vibe orchestrating it a little bit. Now it created the DB, so I'm guiding it, I think, is the answer.
You're being the conductor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, here's the thing, though, Matt, is that like I'm currently defining a product that I'm vibe coding. Haven't started the code product, but I've actually written a 40-page PRD that's a very technical architectural PRD, not a normal PRD that a PM should write, because if you write that sort of PRD and give it to the engineering team, they will like attack you because you're telling them how to build it. But for vibe coding, you need to do both the PRD, the use cases, the personas, and the architecture. So your vibe code PRDs are huge. You need to get really detailed. And in some cases, you need to say this piece of it I want needs to be running Neo4j in a Docker container, and needs to be connectable through using so specific types of technologies. Like
that's just because you're opinionated as an integrated role across all those steps of the methodology.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, right? And no, I'm a product management guy around management PM teams, and I wouldn't do that if I was giving a PRD to like a Figma designer or an engineering team. But because I am both the PM, the designer, and the engineering coder, I got to put all that in one PRD, and I got to write it in kind of prompt language, prompt vibe language, so that I can actually give it to Rue to say, start building this.
Yeah, and
David,
it's
how
an
many
integrated
tokens is that?
methodology, right? And you know the power of that is concentrated in yourself,
Yeah.
rather than dependent on this chain of other individuals across the organization.
And that's why I do it. Yeah. And that's what I think, that to me, that's the future of product management, is that I'll be as an extension of engineering and of design, as well as I do all the front end stuff, the competitive analysis, the marketing, the, you know, all that crap.
Right. And
So I'm a
whereas
one-person 5-man team.
right, but whereas before you then get all these knowledge gaps and these collaboration issues. Now with it being, you can do it all in your head, right? The coherence and the speed, because you can do this excellence all the way down the value chain, is immense. That's the promise.
Absolutely, and that's exactly where PM is going. Is that, but as a PM, you already know most of that anyway. But there's always this tension between design and engineering, and you're supposed to not tell engineering how to build it, right? But if you're the one-man team, you've got all that in your head. I'm a super technical PM. I can write code and like Python, Rust, and Go, so I know how to do all this anyway.
I usually break it out, David, and break it out specifically into technical specifications, functional specifications, mostly following in, sort of my exposure to Reuven's process earlier. But I guess as long as you're covering that ground, it doesn't matter if it's in a singular document or broken out separately.
You're right, Rob. And the key thing that is really catching me, and this is one for you, Reuven, is the test-driven development. The theory that you have sort of proposed here, and we work with, is that you should do your test first, right? You need to build out your test first so that it knows what to code against and what to test against. So that's the tricky part for a product management. When you're defining a POD, is like how to get your tests built out first before you start writing any code.
Yeah.
That point about hands off, sorry, just to finish your point, that hands off, or rather handing off, right, was because it's only fair that you build it, you run it, right? And you're asking someone else to build it, they have to have a say, but they don't exist anymore. So
they don't. It's like it's in one person's mind now. And so my PRDs are like 40 pages, plus I have some supporting PRDs or our specs and docs. But you know, it's all in this sort of different language now, which is what we're doing here.
So David, I mean, you touched upon the future of PM, right? So you obviously know your stuff. You are actually a developer in disguise as a PM, right? In fact, but even for people who are not, who have lost, like in my personal case, right? I mean, the first version from a discussion, anyone can create, right? I mean, the way to do you talked about the detailed, customer journey and all. If you kind of would have found the deep research mode that, that Rose Prom does, that actually creates most of the guardrails anyways for the build. So for me, like even someone who's starting off new, I mean, basically getting the groove of this, the first iteration is relatively pretty easy. That probably is the spec to the engineering team to say, here is what it is. And now you guys, you do it. So it's no longer like a PRD, but that's the specification.
Yeah, so that's what you should be aware of, is that if you use Perplexity or OpenAI Deep Research to say, draft me a PRD for this particular problem space and this particular application, it'll do it. It'll do a really good job of it. But I always find that it does an 80% job and it misses one of the big ticket items. So you've got to read it and you got to know what the application is and the problem space and the use cases are. But that PRD will reflect a traditional PRD that you would normally give to the engineering team to design, architect it, design it, build it. You can't give that PRD to Rue and say, now build it. It's not good enough to vibe code from that. You've got to elaborate on that as an engineer, as an architect, as a designer, and as a vibe coder. You've got to build out that PRD. That's why the normal process now is to give it like a 5-page PRD to an engineering team. You would never, I've built 100-page PRDs in the old days. I would never do that today, but with vibe coding, I have to do that. You've got to be able to build the depth.
David, do you have a outline or framework of a PRD that you are comfortable with? Like for an example, so us starting with the PRD process could get an idea of how much needs to be there and where it starts and stops.
I could actually show you some of my PRDs. Like the one I'm working on now is actually, I'll share it with you. It's actually what I call a vibe quant, stock quant. So I'm building all of the knowledge of a stock trading quantitative analysis guy, but as a vibe code, so anybody can be a quant basically. Anybody can be a stock trading quant and do all the deep analysis that they do over months in like the space of like 3 minutes, which is kind of what do all this analysis and stuff. I could show you guys my PRD for that. It's a filled out PRD, not a template, but I could do it. I'll have a look for it. And Ruben, I've hijacked Ruben's presentation. I don't want to do that, man. Sorry.
David, do you think you could join us tomorrow for
You can
the
present
open
tomorrow.
talks?
Yeah,
Okay.
you guys can do whatever you want. I'm just building my presentation for next week. But you guys saw how quickly I created myself a data science system, like 20 minutes. So apparently it sucks to be a data scientist. Ironically.
Yeah, it does.
I know it's so. And by the way, I hope I was embedded into a few data science teams recently. I'm not the most popular guy when I show up. Sometimes when people can't hide their disdain on their face when they have that sort of shit-eating grin. I know. I show up and I see that sort of look and I'm like, oh great, this is gonna be one of those engagements. But I don't. This explains why. Look, what I just did, this job cluster visualization, I literally just asked Perplexity to go build me this thing, tell me review the jobs in UK, and then create a data structure for it. Literally in a second. I vibed the whole damn thing.
This is awesome. This is one of the first use cases that came out like 2 years ago was conversational analytics, and that's just basically what you've done.
This is exactly what I'm doing. So now that I've done it, now I need to figure out how to present it. Let's see. So I'm gonna jump. I'm gonna jump back into my. I'm gonna jump back.
Or just push it into Gamma.
Well, I'm gonna give the presentation. I'm gonna give the presentation live. I just want to figure out what I'm gonna show. I'll take the README to.
I discovered something yesterday, unless you guys have seen, Gemini, after the releases, they have an export option of when you do deep research, they have got these, used to be export to docs only. Now they have said export to a lot of other options and then give something else. So I said game. So I was working on a use case. So basically, based on what I have, they created a kind of a gamification or a website option for presentation. So like if you have this output, present it as like a website, interactive website, it just creates it for you. So that was quite interesting.
Well, I'm the presenter. I don't need to. I only have 20. I've got 35 minutes to give me my entire presentation. And what's going on here?
I mean, you just said it took you 20 minutes to run it in the background. You could either show them at the beginning, by the way, this is me. I'm going to run this in the background while we talk. And at the end, come back and show them that it's actually done.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of line bars, you could actually have representations of the teams in 2019, there was 8 people. In 2024, now it's 1 to 3, and actually use the icons of the people possibly instead of the bars, because you have to figure out how to read that.
Oh, the data scientists. If a data scientist can't read a bar chart, then they're definitely going to be automated. These two are the most basic form of data visualization, right? I'm going to assume that these people are at least somewhat capable. Maybe that's the wrong assumption, but all right. So I've got the O'Reilly Superstream. I'm going to put that into another folder. We'll call that presentation. And where did that folder go? Presentation. And then what I'm going to do, rename that something a little better. and Gen AI super stream. And now what I'm going to do, I do like the idea of starting something at the beginning, but it might be disjointed to start before you know what the hell it is, but I don't know. We'll figure that out in a sec. We're going to go back here and I'm going to update the README, using the presentation superstream and the current implementation as a tutorial step by step. Include the Spark specification as outlined in through modes. And I don't know if this is interesting to you guys to see how I put together a presentation I'm doing next week. You can tune into the presentation and see how bad I massacre it. I'm basically introducing sort of my approach, and I'm just gonna go here. We'll go to the document writer. This should be a high-level introduction to how I, Rue, use agentic development and vibe coding for data science. Great. Now let's go here. Let's look at this. Where's my README? Let's leave all this. All right. Include advanced kit actually and oops. All right, I think this should be good. Right, let's see. Let's see what it does. Remember when we had to do all this by hand and scratch, and this would have been like a 2-day project just to do the stupid presentation?
Oh, yeah. God, man. More than that, dude. Presentations for these things take like a week to get right.
And I even I exported my entire presentation as a text file. I could probably format that up a little bit more. So now it's going to review all the stuff I created and then create a little tutorial. I might try to integrate some more this scikit components. I really like scikit for like basic data science stuff because it's easy. You know,
Yeah,
it mimics a lot of the structure of PyTorch without having to wait 20 minutes for everything to install.
Yeah. It's a great module. Python module.
Yeah. You can see how quickly I was able to do it here. This is, I guess I probably need the extension.
It's one of the originals, man. Scikit-learn.
Yeah, it's still one of my favorites. You know.
Yeah, it's up there on the leaderboard.
Show what I got. All right, let's see what it's doing now. It's just reviewing everything, I guess. What else? Let's see what. Let's take a closer look at what the heck it built. And so, job analytics example. Demonstrates how to use the database with scikit-learn for analytics. It uses learn. Looks like it's generating sample data. This is the data I scraped from, using complexity. Oh, here we go. Let's create a tutorial. Superstream is a project demonstrating agentic engineering and vibe coding principles by me. gives you my definition. It's creating a regurgitated version of the presentation, which is kind of what I wanted. My spec model MCP. I didn't add an MCP, but I guess I'm using the MCP from Rue's point of view. Deputy design first is often described as SQL-like for analytics. That was a good suggestion. Thanks, guys, for that. All right, looks like that's done. Let's render that and see what that looks like.
Something funny about MCP, I was writing my PhD and OpenAI interpreted MCP as master control program.
Yeah, it does that all the time.
So I had to actually tell it what MCP meant.
Was MCP a thing back in like June 2024?
Came out.
No,
came
it came
out
out in November.
in October, November, yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Dude, it's
cutoff
like
for
yeah.
the OpenAI models.
All right. The project consists of several Python scripts to demonstrate aspects of the system. Right. Tutorial setting up the DuckDB database. That's good. Populating it with data jobs. Oh, yeah. Let's update that. We're using the City AI MCP within Rue code for the populating of data jobs. Review the MCP.json and at MCP instructions and update the tutorial. All right, so that's because I statically inserted the data, but I got the data by doing the query. The idea is to use Rue code MCP capabilities to research and populate the DuckDB and related data. We probably should use a CSV, but we'll worry about that later. Leave the rest as is. All right, what else do we do here? Using it looks like we have a CLI, we have title engineer, we can filter by, that's kind of cool. So we can filter by jobs. We got advanced uses, create a custom advanced analytics by combining DuckDB SQL capabilities. This is actually kind of a cool little thing I built here. Extending the database, we can add new structures, integrate with other systems. Okay, what's it adding now? Oh, here we go. Now, hopefully it didn't actually add my key. All right, where is it? Yes, the GitHub's correct. Yeah, that's technically correct. Your key or whatever. All right, just need to give it a little more guidance. What it did is it gave it the actual XML that Rue needs to use to invoke it, which is not quite right? This is technically true. This is how it does the argument, but it's not actually how you set it up, which would be, I think, confusing. So it's like telling it basically how Rue does it, not how you do it. It's the wrong perspective. There we go. Now that's the way we want it. All right. Configure the close, yeah. Within Rue, use the perfection, yeah, that's better. Rue, okay, let's cancel that. Number 2. Or number 2. Make it 0.
I think one of the things that people don't necessarily see as often is just the magnitude of documentation and backstory you can offer in this. And I think that's part of the vibe coding benefit if you can put all the information here, because this is all the stuff people do after and it never gets done. And this is such a good backstory.
These are engineered processes. I don't think a vibe coder is going to matter.
Yeah, I can't remember how.
Yeah, it's and you're right. It's not just set and forget. And sometimes I brag about, I can let it run for 36 hours without me touching it. That's more like a marathon, just to show that you can do it. But most of the stuff, really, I'm running for a couple hours. I'm iterating, I'm fixing, I'm adjusting. It's not too often I let something run for 36 hours, other than just to prove that I could.
Are you disconnecting the sessions and letting
it's an approach for excellence, right? Because you've got these deep methodologies, and you can say what excellence looks like, and then say, go do that thing. Do it the best you could possibly do it.
You know what I want to do? I'm thinking. I'm already vibing here, so let's vibe this. Let's vibe this a little further. Create an advanced version of the tutorial. No, I'm not sure how to describe it. Of the analytics, Java analytics. Yeah, this one. Java analytics DB. Create. And what I don't want to do, I don't want to hit an LLM. I want Rue to be the LLM. I don't want to have to go and make it separate. So what I want to do is I want to create another version, create an advanced version of the in a subfolder advanced that uses the perplexity. Perplexity is the worst freaking name for something. Perplexity MCP as part of the data gathering component, similar to the attached example. And let's go here. Where's my picture? We'll use this. And remove the Gemini LLM requirement and just use the raw JSON response and update the DB advanced DB and create all the files init, import, CLI, etc. and a readme that can be in a subfolder. All right, I think that makes sense. Now I'm going to switch back to my there, and I'm going to say use subtasks via new _ task. Now you see what I'm doing? I'm spawning subtask from the original. The original has the context that I want, but I don't want it to get confused with all the other crap I just did. I want it to orchestrate sub. Now I could do this also by switching to just orchestrator, which is, let's do that. Why not? And I'm going to copy this. Hopefully that makes sense.
So where did
Let's
the
see.
Gemini thing come into thing? You are using Perplexity for data gathering. You want an
Oh
endpoint.
yeah. So what I did. So it's a good question. If you look really closely, it's probably too small to see. This image is how to create a sort of MCP-driven sort of tooling. But I used Gemini API to do this yesterday. It was like a LinkedIn post I did just for the hell of it. But I don't want to include Gemini in this case. I just want to be able to request the MCP, and then I want to be able to then get the data. So and it already knows how to use the perplexity, hopefully. So I'm just going to take the perplexity and do that. So now you see it created a subtask. And it's going to create an advanced version. It's going to initialize a DuckDB, and I create a new DuckDB here. And then I'm going to create a README and some other stuff for it. And see what it
Under
does.
what circumstances do you completely start a new task versus just add chat context to an existing task?
When I'm actually building a project that's meaningful and guided, and I'm probably not going to do that, but I'm vibing. Like right now, I'm just vibing. And so if you think of it like a tree, this is a branch from the original vibing session. The original trunk gives it all the context to the thing I was building. This branch is a sub sort of vibe from that. So I'm vibing in a kind of orchestrated mode. Subtasks, main tasks, research. So now I'm using the perplexity components here. And by the way, the integration of MCP as part of your vibing process, as you can see, is spectacular, right? I can integrate all kinds of different MCPs based on what I'm vibing. And like if I'm doing like a agent using Mastra or something, I'll use the Mastra MCP, which tells me all about Mastra. So it's a really cool way to sort of vibe. And now there might be a DuckDB MCP that I could go find somewhere, and I could start using that. That's actually an interesting thing that maybe I'll do that next. All right, so it's creating a new folder. So while that's happening, what I might go do a quick search here. I'm going to go to ChatGPT. There's got to be a DuckDB MCP somewhere. You know, give me a list of DuckDB MCPs. I'll let that cook for a minute. So now it's creating an advanced job-related, better error handling, advanced methods for leveraging AI-related metrics, better data extraction, integration of the Perplexity MCP for data gathering. So now what I'm doing is I'm creating a pipeline that actually uses an MCP directly in the code itself, where before I was abstracting the Perplexity MCP through root code. I actually wanted to integrate that directly in the system itself. You can see here this might be, so it's going to extract the data. That's a good way to do it. So this is the data structure, the DB structure, a schema, I guess you'd say. Creates the index. Now what I probably want to do at the very end is add a environmental variable so I don't give everyone my perplexity. I'll do that here in a minute. After it works, I'll worry about the environmental variable. Oh, this happens sometimes on longer writes. I don't know why it does that. Okay. And why? So, and also ChatGPT doesn't like me sharing the screen anymore. It locks it all up. It only happens when I'm using Zoom. Yeah, everything broke. All right, I'm gonna cancel this for a moment. This is something that happens frequently. Use a more modular file folder structure. Yeah, it for whatever reason, when you reach around 700 to 1,000 lines, it root truncates. I don't know why, but let's go with a more modular structure. Let me check my calendar, make sure I'm not skipping someone's meeting. I'm smarter. I extended this call, so people have a tendency to book me right at the end, and I was late for every single one of these. Does this make sense so far, what I'm showing you guys?
Yes.
You mentioned about using MCP within the code. I did see the code was actually writing a lot of SQL statement. Could you elaborate that a little bit? I'm not sure I fully followed that bit.
I'm basically using Perplexity MCP to search for different topics. In this case, doing analytics on jobs and jobs impacted by AI. Then I'm setting up the SQL structure using DuckDB and saving the response output from the MCP directly to the database. Then I'm running a rudimentary data analytics model using scikit, or sciklearn, or whatever they call it, and then running the whole thing as a CLI. I like CLIs for data science in particular because of what you see right here. When you in Rue, you've got the execution mode. I find most things, I can run, especially for local types of things. I don't need studio MCP. A CLI is actually more than adequate because you can run those commands directly in here, and then it could self-optimize and test and do everything it needs to do.
What you
I'm not
also
sure.
show on your slide deck, Rue, the impact of agentic engineering, where you talk about how you're able to do the tasks of 3 people and it saves XX dollars for what it would normally cost in development time and cost savings. Would you also want to include something like that on this deck?
Well, I could, but again, I got 35 minutes. It's one of those things like maybe I should speak to it.
Yeah.
I'm not like a big fan of like walls of text. This is a wall of text, right?
Yeah.
But
Take a screenshot of that, drop it in the chat GPT or reference model.
create like a yeah. I don't even like putting in my own like consult. I don't like the self-promotion part either, but everyone tells me I have to put that in there. And then at the very end, I've got this. Maybe this is what you're talking about, something like this.
So a lot of posts you have, often you talk about the end result where you say it ran for X amount of time and what it would normally cost is $100,000 in development time. That's what I was trying to talk about. Basically, the whole overall system and the ROI of the system, and what you're able to do as one person would normally in the enterprise take, a DevOps team and 6 months and costs 80K, 100K.
That means the SCC command basically. So Roop, with that you do, maybe it's just the running the SCC command on your code. I think that's what you refer, Matt, right?
Oh yeah, I could do that.
Yes.
Let's go to Klein. Klein just got an update today. Looking pretty good. Install the Go SCC library and run it against the what the heck's the name of that folder? I guess DB and advanced. Am I trying to do too much? DB. Now I'm running Klein and Root at the same time. I don't know which I like better, the way that the way that Rue integrates the command, terminal directly in the session, or the way these guys sort of, force it to the existing terminal. But for installs, it definitely, sometimes you just want it to go to the terminal. Clients, for this sort of thing, I like it. So it's installing the SCC. Let's go see what Rue is doing while it's happening. All right, let's go back here and see what it dreamt up. Oh, there we go. AI engineers ROI multipliers. So they give it increase in data analysis productivity expected. I don't know about that text. That's just bullshit. Let's see what else it comes up with. I might have to actually write that one. That's like text to me. It's meaningless text.
Where is that? So start the slide deck you were showing. Where is that coming from? Is it coming from here, from the out this one? Is it auto updating? No, right?
I haven't inserted it yet, but I'm using Gemini's, slide creator. So AI data science are a significant increase in data. I don't like the image, but the text is better. All right, let's use that. Let's lose this cheesy image. Sometimes you don't need a cheesy text. You just gotta say what you mean and leave it at that. Significant increase in data analysis productivity for sure. Reduction in traditional data science hiring costs. Yep. Enhanced scalability with automated workflows. Yeah. Faster insights leading to quicker business decision. Potential substantial return on investment. Doing more with less.
Sorry to step off and come back. Are you trying to figure out what the value props are for doing this?
Yeah, it was a suggestion. I sort of finished with a value prop.
The one thing with conversational analytics, because it was a very early use case, sort of 2 years ago, is that, as you know, data scientists are really expensive, and it turns out that only certain large companies can have them. So by having conversational analytics tools, it democratizes data science, and lets like the average person be a data scientist. Everybody can be a data scientist. That's the real reason for doing conversational analytics tools.
Yeah.
So like a $75,000 salaried person can act like a $350,000 data scientist. That's the real value. Everybody can be a data scientist now, and you don't need special training.
Charities, non-for-profits, anyone could do it, and which is great for society.
Yeah, that's the real reason why these tools are good.
From my one-bedroom apartment, I can be a data scientist, and so can you.
Yeah.
It sounds like an info commercial from like the 90s.
It does. Ginsu nice.
Yeah. I can cut through a penny.
Oh, what's the Ronco? Set it and forget it. The oven. Put the chicken.
Yeah, there
in.
you go. Exactly. I need like a one of those sweaters the guy used to wear.
Oh my God.
You know the guy I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Sweater guy. All right. So apparently, if you believe SCC, estimated cost to develop 44,000 months, 4 months. Oh, that's silly. Required. I'll break that one.
They want to put an asterisk there in case someone takes you to task for it.
Well, I could do a screenshot.
I like that tool actually. I installed that tool last week and played with it. It's got a weird name though.
What's that tool?
The SCC tool.
There we go. So you're saying maybe let's do a screenshot of this?
Yeah.
I think you mean to exclude some directories. I think it's probably taking all the directories.
Yeah, it takes them all.
In the last 20 specified specific directories, subdirectories, right?
Oh yeah, it's $200,000, right? Okay, cancel that. You're right. Good catch. Only include the advanced and the folders and nothing. Yeah, you know what? I'm like, oh, I did $300,000 in 20 minutes. That's a bit much. Oh, where'd it go? All right, I'm just gonna run it directly. I'm not sure why it keeps doing. I'm running multiple things at the same time. It's probably what's. Yeah, it seems to disappear after a second. All right, stop doing that.
Looks like it just
There we
opened a new terminal.
Yeah, it's just closing the terminal after it's done, which I don't want it to do. What's the value in this one? Is this a more reasonable number?
What does it say?
Oh,
It doesn't have the dollar number here.
no.
SCC by file sort code.
I don't know why it keeps closing. All right, it's taking the terminal output and then closing it when it's done, which is kind of annoying.
This would be a useful thing to add to Spark.
Oh, you don't need a Spark. This is not. This is just a terminal.
Yeah, I know. But what I'm saying is that it's an output, right? So it assesses the value.
Yeah, it's a console command, so it wouldn't be. You'd have to install it. I'm only doing prompts. All right, 66,000. It's skill building, that's why it's higher.
Do we know how
Alright.
it gets to the dollar number? Like, does it take any particular average salary details? Like, do you know the details of?
How is
Yeah,
the
it's all
dollar?
configurable. You could change it and tweak it. You could do the hourly rate. It's all configurable, and they use a standard database.
What the hourly rate is considering at the moment?
That's a good question, Mon.
Well,
We could lines of
5
code.
months,
Is it
one
API
fifth
usage? Is
person.
it
$66,000. You could probably back it out that way.
Yeah, fair enough.
Or I just ask it. I don't know. This is the default output, right? I'm just gonna go here and I'm gonna use this view because it looks more.
Stock clock code is the name. It's a weird name for that tool, man.
Construction cost object or something like that I saw. Okay.
It's a collection, I think, of 3 estimating libraries or methodologies.
Yeah, ACC.
Let's make that rounded to make it look a little better. There we go. That looks more believable.
Maybe put a hashtag science.
This person constructive cost model following the parameters. All right, we'll copy that. I'll get to my. There we go. Some math in there for those who like math. I think. Let's see where Rue is. Still building. Well, you guys also saw that you can use multiple clients at the same time. So while Rue was building this, what the heck did it build? Let's go to advanced. README.
Rube, do you know how SEC gets the value of the overall value? 72,000. Is it lines of code? Is it API?
No, it just said it right here. Uses the basic Como constructor cost model.
Okay.
Yeah. Kokomo calculations.
Yeah. That might be an interesting post for me to do, actually. If I can customize SCC, what I should do is some kind of like the more code you can produce, the less value of the code and the time and the amount of effort. I should do some kind of like reductive algorithm that basically says, you know, I can crank 10 million lines of code a year, but that doesn't mean that 10 million lines of code is actually worth $200 million. It actually means that 10 million lines of code is worth some, you know, order of magnitude less based on some kind of mathematical equation that I determine.
Because
So
this is
it
the one
uses
that
three
benchmark
models.
that against open source libraries and their
So
lines of code.
It uses three models: organic, semi-detached, and embedded. But you can also customize the model that it uses as well. Highly customizable for calculating the financials of its estimate.
So on that point, building on that point, one of the criticisms I think against vibe coding or agentic is people are like traditional software engineering will say, well, but it doesn't mean that you write so many lines of code. So it is, it's about tech debt, etc. So this point about reductive cost modeling, how can we showcase the quality of the code and thereby what therefore is the value of it? Like I'm thinking more like, so that point of criticism that people come about to say, okay, but this is not as good as what a human could produce, etc., etc.
Sure, it doesn't have debt.
Well,
Right? The debt is a massive thing. You think you've got progress, but actually you've accumulated debt. If you can show you have built excellence across the methodology and it's robust, then surely that's a great starting point.
Take an
It is-
existing application, define features, and then you reproduce the features without reproducing the code.
Sorry.
Whatever the cost of reproduce it is the basis.
Can't hear you all the way, Jet.
You take an existing application and its features, and then you compare that against something that's reproduced without reproducing the actual code. So that's how you can assess quality. You benchmark with that, and then whatever your new cost versus the perceived old cost is what you're comparing.
Super hard to do quality, man, to assess code quality.
It's subjective. Like,
yeah, totally subjective.
And everyone and the pushback I get from almost everyone when I show up in a business is, you're cranking out so much code, it has to be bad.
Yeah, low quality, right?
Yeah, it has to be low quality, which is subjective. And it's almost impossible for me to basically say, no, it's not bad. It's actually pretty good. And here's why. Because it's subjective, right? And any developer worth their salt is going to go into my code and they're going to find problems 100%.
Of course.
Because there is no such thing as perfect code. It's like perfect, written words. It just doesn't exist, the difference between Shakespeare and some other writer is purely subjective. I like this more than I like the other. It doesn't make it better or worse as long as it's grammatically correct. Same general idea.
Yeah,
so
one of the biggest things that points that vibe coding gets hammered on is supportability in production, right? Because the code that it generates is supposedly like elaborate or overly complicated, which makes it very difficult. In order to support it in production, an engineer has to sit down and read the code and figure out what the hell the system was actually thinking when it wrote the code, which you lose now you have to spend all this time learning code that you didn't spend writing the code. And that's one of the biggest problems that vibe coding comes up against is, so it's fast prototyping, awesome, but to support it in production, you end up spending all that time to learn the code. And nobody wants to learn somebody else's code, right?
To build on that point, David, the solution, I would think, is to keep everything modular. And if something's broken, rewrite it. Don't try to understand how it used to work. Go by whatever spec
Absolutely.
to find the feature and then rebuild it.
Yeah, I agree. The rule of keeping everything under below 500 lines and then also doing highly modularized code, I actually believe that's a way forward for combating that objection around don't using vibe code because it can't support it in production.
Yeah. And you built all these test harnesses around it. So it should be, because the test harness requires that modularity, you should be able to establish quickly what the issue is.
Yes.
And it should be modular enough to be able to swap it out.
I totally agree. And that's why I was talking earlier is like, Ruben's thesis is you get it to write your codes first, to tests first, then write your code against the tests. And so if you get your test harness and all your test cases done and built out, then you modular and the code's modular, then it's awesome. That's great.
Well,
anybody can support your code.
And in fairness, that's not my thesis. That's called the London School of Test-Driven Development. Now, there's also the Detroit School. I don't know who names this stuff, but it wasn't me. And the Detroit School of Test-Driven Development is essentially waterfall. I'm building a function, I build a test, and then I run the test against the function that I'm currently building. And that's how 99% of test-driven development is done today, because nobody really wants to build entire scaffolding, and do the job literally 3 times to solve the same problem. But AI doesn't complain. So the fact that AI is doing 4 times the work to get to the same result is a feature, not a bug in this scenario. So the London School of Test-Driven Development is suddenly really practical, because it creates a roadmap of what needs to be developed before it actually develops it in multiple steps. A mocked step, which is faking it before you make it. It then makes it. Once it's made, then you can go and say, implement a more Detroit-style implementation of the test against real endpoints and MCPs or whatever. And again, you've now done 2 different implementations of a test-driven development process to get to a single output.
I would rather have
build some rewrite.
Yeah, I would rather have my system designed and built and run through like 19 times than once. God knows how many products I've had built that took 18 months to build and were like 7 million lines of code and were like almost failures. I'd rather break it down into like small iterations and iterate over them like 100 times. Way better way to do it.
Yeah, and if you look at what I'm doing right now, I did the opposite. I did let's call it the Detroit Vibe School. I created an initial, just to recap what we've built today, I created an initial implementation of a DuckDB sort of analytical system. It worked great. Then I said, okay, let's go and build this in a more modular, scalable, extensible way. It did that. Then I didn't test it. Then I said, go, and I noticed that it forgot to include the actual Perplexity MCP implementation. So I said, to create an ENV, which basically allows me to define where the Perplexity MCP is running, which is apparently localhost, which I'll fix later. Then lastly, I told it to go create a unit testing framework based on everything that's in here, and then run it until I get 100% coverage. So that would be a top-down approach, because I vibed it, right? I wasn't sure what I wanted to build. You guys kind of watched me discover that I was going to build something based on which jobs get replaced. So now it's going and it's going to create the missing parts to parse the various components. Now I'm still going to have to do a few other things to get to the endpoint, but I vibe myself an MCP-driven data analytics system, which is with no need for having an LLM to interpret it, which is cheaper.
Yeah, conversational analytics tool.
Yeah, and this will integrate really nicely into Rue. So now if I wanted to create a data analytics system, which I do, directly in Rue to enact and have Rue act as the orchestrator of the analytics, all I need to do is point Rue at this code and say, go do your thing. Now this is going to be problematic. I already know it, but that's okay. I'll get it to replace this with the actual endpoint for Composio or whatever I'm using as a remote instantiation of it. But I'm going to worry about that later because I want the tests to pass first. Once all the tests pass, then I'll go back and say update any mentions of localhost with the actual live Perplexity MCP endpoint, which inevitably will result in a few errors because the response will be different. I'll fix those and then we'll be good to go.
Right.
And that this is as far as vibe coding goes, we've hit like a new tier of vibe coding today. I think this is a really good approach.
Yeah. Why do you say new tier? What did we do that was different?
Well, what we've integrated a sort of MCP-driven data collection process as part of the vibe coding, right? So we essentially use the Perplexity MCP to do the research and then implement it as part of it. So where normally I would have gone in when the ChatGPT or Perplexity directly and said do deep research, create a strategy. I did that more iteratively today.
Got it.
I don't know. I'm using hyperbole, whatever.
Ruben just pasted my comment back at the bottom of the chat. Regarding one of your early slides, you say that your framework is a methodology. I don't think it is. I think it's an approach for excellence, for incorporating deep methodologies into the automation of a value chain. And Spark is just one of those value chains.
So you think I should call it like a framework? Like what the heck do I call
No,
it?
I think you do have a framework, but I think the framework is for pulling in methodologies. Right. So I think
Spark, just Spark? Like what the heck?
Well, I think your approach can pull in methodologies, and Spark is one of the methodologies. So maybe it's fine now. Maybe it's a conversation for later.
I don't think it's, I don't know how much value that adds to this presentation.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't want to make it complicated now, but I think it is worth a discussion.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm not really sure. I've debated whether or not to call it a framework, a methodology, prompt engineering. I don't know.
I would go a step further to say, is it a catalyst, like chemical reaction? You put a catalyst in and all the different elements behave better, pseudocode, specification writing. Yeah, just visualizing it. Is it perhaps a catalyst?
Yeah, I was bouncing around thoughts. I wanted to get your opinion on the thought of vibe coding, because I think it really doesn't do what root code, complete justice to root code. Because and as I'm thinking through the process, you to properly evangelize root code, in my opinion, I think what you are currently doing is very much aligned with test-driven development, trunk-based development, DevOps, things that enterprise developers have gone through the transformation for the last 2 years. So, and technically, under the hood, it's all of that. It's not just the vibe coding part. It's more what an enterprise is doing now.
Yeah. So what I call that a convergence, right? You're converging like 5 roles.
So the roles, but also the methodology, like DevOps,
the thought process,
development.
We need to have this. We need to make this a focused discussion. I think this is
it's powerful, right? Yeah, super powerful of what you're doing, Rube. So but I think the way they evangelize is meet the developers where they are and what they understand, so.
All right, well, I'm out of time, and next week I'll be doing this, and I think there's a free link somewhere that I got for if you guys want to tune into the O'Reilly presentation. There's a whole morning, afternoon, depending where you are, I guess, of similar presentations from the O'Reilly team on data analytics, and I'm covering the Agentics part of it. You guys will see. You guys got a sneak peek at how I came up with the whole thing that I'll end up presenting next week.
That's cool. Thanks.
All right. Thanks everyone. And if anyone that wants to show anything tomorrow, we've always got spots for you to show on the Friday sessions.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.